Listen up, you blood-drunk fools drowning in your delusional fantasy of unbreakable power. Stare directly into the raging crescent moon flag scorching the skies of Anatolia and tremble. Turkey was never meant to sit silently like a coward in this bloody theater of savagery. Our long silence was never weakness. It was the deadly build-up of a cataclysmic storm now ready to explode with fury. You arrogant bastards hiding behind your steel walls and foreign protection. Remember this cold warning. The bleach bones of your defeated allies still rot in Karabakh and Libya as a chilling message from the grave. Once the Ottoman sword is fully unsheathed, no border will be safe. No fortress will stand, and every last trace of your arrogance will be crushed into dust beneath the iron treads of the Turkish war machine. Ankara is not here to beg or bargain with worthless paper. The new Ottomans have come to enforce divine justice through pure, unrelenting firepower. If Tel Aviv does not immediately pull back its filthy octopus tentacles and grovel on its knees, then brace yourselves for a merciless historic onslaught. Turkey will march forward not to occupy land, but to purge this cancer once and for all, and rebuild a new order with rivers of blood and oceans of steel from a rising empire that will shake the world. The Middle East is convulsing in a political cataclysm never seen before. While the guns continue their mad bombardment of Tehran and Washington foolishly obsesses over blockading the Strait of Hormuz, a monstrous shadow has risen from the north like the angel of death itself. This is no longer hollow diplomatic threats or pathetic press releases. The Lion of Anatolia has just flipped the entire table and unleashed a devastating steel hammer blow that has left the whole world gasping in shock and terror. Turkey, master of the toughest, most battle-hardened war machine within the alliance, has boldly declared total war, standing shoulder to shoulder with Tehran and Hezbollah in a savage, blood-soaked alliance of vengeance. Their single merciless goal is to completely flatten arrogance and erase an existence through overwhelming fire and steel. This is not some minor proxy skirmish anymore. This is a historic reckoning where Ankara has ripped off the fake Western mask and reclaimed its destiny as the supreme power of a reborn Ottoman Empire. And look at the White House now. The so-called master of the deal and king of unpredictable moves is turning ghostly pale, panicking, and visibly shaking with fear before this brutal reality. Will this so-called strong man protect his spoiled, arrogant child now trapped in flames? Or will he desperately cling to Turkey just to save his crumbling alliance? The brutal truth is staring him in the face. The reign of the superpower over the Middle East may be collapsing right before his eyes. Before we dive into the firestorm, know that this analysis is the hardest hitting, no-holds-barred look at global chaos you will find anywhere. The skies above Ankara are no longer peaceful. They are a boiling cauldron of gunpowder and righteous fury, violently ripped open by the deafening war cries of Turkish fighter jets, hurtling southward like unstoppable arrows of divine vengeance, locked onto the throat of the enemy. In the raging heart of this apocalyptic geopolitical storm, the leader storms onto the world stage, not as some weak politician begging for deals, but as the fierce reincarnation of a conquering sultan, a ruthless ruler clutching the final death warrant that will seal the doom of an entire corrupt region. The ultimatum Turkey has just viciously smashed onto the global power table is nothing short of a blazing thunderbolt of destruction, hammering straight into the rotten core of Tel Aviv. Ankara is done with spineless diplomatic lies and pathetic whispers. They are now carving unbreakable red lines with rivers of enemy blood in the unstoppable roar of real merciless firepower. For far too long, the arrogant regime has strutted like kings, shamelessly riding the back of the Middle Eastern tiger with zero fear, treating sacred United Nations resolutions like filthy toilet paper, and spitting on the boiling rage of the entire Muslim world as if it were the worthless buzzing of insignificant insects. But this time the beast staring them down is no pathetic ragtag militia scraping for weapons, nor some broken nation drowning in endless civil war. No, this time they face the awakened Turkish colossus, a sleeping giant that has finally risen after a century of chained fury, now roaring with a volcanic wrath accumulated over hundreds of years of humiliation. The ultimatum holds no mercy, no negotiation, no cowardly compromise. It is a savage absolute decree of iron-fisted power. He coldly invoked the nightmares of Karabakh and Libya as a blood-freezing warning from hell itself. When the Turkish military unleashes its full wrath, the entire political map is savagely redrawn, with the crushing tracks of tanks and the charred skeletons of destroyed enemy armor. In Karabakh, relentless swarms of deadly aerial drones annihilated over 100 enemy tanks and hundreds of armored vehicles, turning proud mechanized forces into worthless piles of burning scrap within hours. In Libya, Turkish intervention shattered every arrogant calculation of global powers, obliterating bases and supply lines with devastating precision. And now the next target in this unstoppable march of justice is none other than the arrogant cancer poisoning the region. This is the position of total unchallenged dominance that Turkey now claims with pride. They refuse to watch the flames from the sidelines like cowards. They stand towering at the summit of regional supremacy, issuing commands that the trembling world is forced to obey. The message is brutally clear, forged in steel and dripping with menace. If Tel Aviv does not instantly retract its filthy blood-soaked octopus tentacles from Lebanon and Palestine, then a cataclysmic firestorm from the north will descend like the wrath of God and incinerate everything in its path. In every thunderous word pouring from the leadership's mouth, the terrifying shadow of the mighty Ottoman Empire rises once again, the same empire that once ruled the Middle East and North Africa with an iron fist for centuries. They have foolishly forgotten that the very ground they desecrate was under Turkish sovereignty for hundreds of years. This ultimatum is not a simple military warning. It is a ferocious declaration reclaiming sacred protection over the Holy Lands and a devastating slap that shatters the delusional dream of supremacy. What shocks the world most is the total venomous contempt for Washington's desperate pleas and pathetic threats. Turkey understands perfectly that the superpower across the ocean is no longer a fair orbiter, but a collapsing protector frantically drowning in its own failures. Ankara's fearless public challenge right under the nose of the current administration is a bold historic declaration of total geopolitical independence and defiance. Turkey holds every decisive trump card, absolute control over the strategic Bosphorus Strait, its irreplaceable role as the alliance's southern backbone, and the most battle-hardened, fearless military in the bloc. They dictate the rules from a position of absolute strength. The battlefield is prepared, and Turkey has deliberately burned every bridge behind it with no retreat possible by boldly declaring it will fight shoulder to shoulder with Iran and Hezbollah. Ankara is not merely forming a temporary pact. It is forging a monstrous tidal wave of converging powers that will drown sickening arrogance in an ocean of blood and fire forever. The target now confronts its most terrifying nightmare since its violent birth. A total grinding war of annihilation against a true superpower possessing endless resources and unbreakable will to sustain a long, merciless campaign of attrition. The words land like heavy hammers, relentlessly sealing the coffin of the fake rotten peace that has suffocated the region for decades. They will never again allow bombing and slaughter at will, as if the entire Middle East were a personal slaughterhouse. The Ottoman sword has been violently ripped from its sheath. Once it begins its deadly swing, it will only return to rest when the enemy's blood has completely soaked the sacred earth red, or when a brand new order of justice rises triumphantly from the smoking ashes of the old corrupt world. The entire planet is now holding its breath in terror. All eyes are locked with dread on the vulnerable northern border, where the ghosts of inevitable war are materializing under the blazing, blood-red crescent flag of Turkey. This is no longer a time for weak debates about right or wrong. This is the sacred moment to witness the raw, unstoppable power of a proud nation, rising to reclaim its ancient glory with fire and steel. Arrogance has sown the wind for too long, and now it will reap the full devastating fury of the apocalyptic storm thundering out of Anatolia. A raging firestorm that will mercilessly burn away every filthy conspiracy and deliver true justice through the absolute supremacy of overwhelming force. The cards have been slammed onto the table. The clock is ticking like a deadly geopolitical time bomb counting down over the doomed skies of Tel Aviv. Next will come the emergence of a terrifying military entity, a demonic war machine rising from the illicit union of forces that should never have been allowed to sit at the same table. The map of the Middle East is no longer a scattered puzzle of isolated skirmishes. It is transformed into a lethal chessboard, where Ankara, Tehran, and Beirut are weaving fatal nooses of destiny, slowly strangling the fortress of Tel Aviv until its last breath is crushed out. This is the terrifying awakening of a monstrous alliance. On one side stands the disciplined, iron-hard, conventional might of a powerful nation. On the second side lurks the cunning, shape-shifting arsenal of a colossal ballistic missile empire. And on the third edge are the fanatical, shadow-dwelling warriors of the resistance, relentless night predators ready to turn every inch of Galilee into a graveyard for soldiers. 3 deadly blades of a single executioner's vice are now closing in, prepared to pulverize any remaining hope of survival for their prey. In the brutal art of war, the greatest danger never comes from a single powerful enemy. It comes from a multi-headed nightmare that attacks from every direction at once. Imagine this horror while air defense systems are desperately trying to intercept endless salvos of hypersonic ballistic missiles screaming in from the east. Suddenly the northern skies are blackened by thousands of Turkish-made suicide drones swarming like angry hornets. At the exact same moment, underground tunnels and next-generation anti-tank missiles from the north begin ripping apart the border defense lines on the ground. This is not some temporary opportunistic cooperation for petty gains. This is the perfect deadly fusion of 3 distinct war bloodlines that complement each other with terrifying precision. Turkey brings the sharp eyes of an eagle, advanced satellite networks, electronic warfare dominance, and real-time battlefield intelligence that the others have always craved. In return, Tehran delivers the long, deadly arm, thousands of precision-guided ballistic missiles, hypersonic weapons capable of piercing any shield, and the looming shadow of immense potential. The third element serves as the razor-sharp fangs of the wolf, battle-hardened fighters who will gladly engage in brutal close-quarters slaughter, turning every street, every hill, and every meter of land into a death trap soaked in blood. Ankara's position of absolute supremacy shines clearly in how it orchestrates this hellish symphony. The leadership does not appear as a beggar asking for help. He stands as the supreme warlord, coldly marking kill zones on the operational map. The presence of Turkey has transformed scattered guerrilla groups into a coordinated, technologically superior fighting force, backed by the legitimacy and industrial power of a sovereign superpower. Look at how this 3-sided vice is mercilessly tightening around the throat. For decades, the defense-in-depth doctrine has been bragged about, but facing this triple-pronged nightmare, every military theory in Tel Aviv's playbook has become laughably obsolete. From the north, a wall of Turkish fire is already burning bright. Turkish air bases in the south have become launch pads for coordinated strikes. Veteran fighter squadrons hardened by real combat are ready to impose a genuine no-fly zone that will completely neutralize the long-held air superiority over Lebanon. But that is only the beginning. From the east, the wrath of ancient principles is being unleashed without restraint. Iran no longer needs to hide behind proxies. With Turkey's ironclad protection, Tehran is confidently raining down hundreds of hypersonic missiles that tear through the sky at unimaginable speeds, targeting strategic command centers and ports with pinpoint accuracy. While the enemy is still reeling from these direct hammer blows, the blades in the shadows begin their deadly work. Under Turkish tactical guidance, guerrilla warfare has elevated into full-scale conventional assault. They no longer hit and run. They now encircle, occupy, and sever critical supply lines with ruthless efficiency. This unholy combination creates unbearable pressure on logistics and morale. No matter how strong a spring is, it will snap when compressed equally from 3 sides with overwhelming force. Tel Aviv today resembles a cornered beast surrounded by guns from every direction, staring into the eyes of countless shadows ready to rip out its throat. The most dangerous aspect of this monstrous alliance is not just the weapons. It is the political earthquake it represents. When Turkey, a core member of the Western Alliance, openly sides with Iran, it delivers a devastating slap across Washington's face and completely shatters efforts to isolate Tehran. Every supply route, every diplomatic corridor must now pass through Turkish checkpoints. Ankara is using the current conflict as a means to crown itself the undisputed leader of the Muslim world. They are forging a ring of honor where any aggression will be treated as an attack on the entire alliance. This is military strategy at its most ruthless and brilliant. They don't need to annihilate every soldier. They only need to suffocate the ability to resist and trap the target in an ever-shrinking space of survival. The administration in the White House must now be staring at the darkest intelligence reports of its tenure. How can they protect the ally when the enemy is no longer stone-throwing youths but armored giants? How can they punish Tehran when Turkey stands behind it, ready to slam shut the Bosphorus Strait at any moment? The target has swaggered for too long in its illusion of solitary strength. In this new game, that very isolation has become its death sentence. The monstrous alliance of Ankara, Tehran, and Beirut is proving that the era of lone superheroes is over, replaced by a deadly chorus of fire and steel that will write the final chapter of arrogance. The The cards are on the table, the vice is tightening, and the clock is ticking toward doom. Listen closely, warriors of truth. When the steel treads of the Turkish legions begin grinding the silence of the border into dust and bones, the entire world finally wakes up in horror and realizes this is no longer a political game. This is total apocalyptic war. The declaration to flatten the opponent is not cheap rhetoric to stir the masses. It is a death sentence written in fire and blood aimed straight at the black heart of arrogance. The Sultan of Anatolia is performing a brutal surgical amputation on the geopolitical map, where the scalpel is self-propelled howitzers, the anesthetic is electronic warfare blackouts, and the operating table is soaked in the blood of the enemy. This is not merely a war for land. This is a head-on collision between two opposing souls of history. One side carries the burning dream of Ottoman revival and leadership over the Muslim world, while the other clings desperately to the extreme delusional stubbornness of an entity that has grown far too comfortable pretending it is untouchable. In the real world of power, national honor is not written on paper resolutions. It is measured by the range of missiles and the reach of tanks. The leadership understands perfectly that to defeat a beast that has long hunted freely, the only way is to turn its own lair into a blazing inferno of hell. The blood oath of no compromise that Ankara has sworn is an absolute rejection of the unjust order that has poisoned the region for over 70 years. Turkey's position of total dominance blazes in the way it redefines the word flatten. It does not mean simply destroying skyscrapers in Tel Aviv. It means crushing arrogance into powder, annihilating the sick illusion that one can stand above international law simply because a superpower shields it. Ankara is now unleashing swarms of death from the skies, endless waves of tireless suicide drones that slip through every crack in the enemy's defenses, turning so-called impregnable fortresses into perforated targets full of smoking holes. Look into the eyes of Turkish soldiers marching toward Jerusalem. Those are not the eyes of invaders. Those are the eyes of warriors come to collect a centuries-old debt written in blood. A fatal mistake was made when it was believed that only scattered guerrilla bands were being faced. The opponent is now confronting an entire nation carrying the warrior blood of history's greatest conquerors. Every Turkish missile launched carries the unbreakable blood oath of a generation that will never again accept humiliation and slavery. The ruthless brilliance of this campaign lies in attacking exactly where the target is most vulnerable, not where it is strongest. Turkey is strangling the Mediterranean sea lanes, turning the entire sea into a Turkish lake, where every supply ship heading to Tel Aviv must face the guns of warships bearing Ottoman names. They are methodically cutting off the enemy's lifeline, slowly suffocating the target from the inside while fire rains down from the outside. Never in modern history has this entity felt the icy chill of isolation so brutally. When the declaration of no compromise, no mercy was made, every door of negotiation was slammed shut forever. Turkey does not want a temporary ceasefire. It demands total submission or total annihilation. The proud Western allies can only watch from afar, sending useless words of deep concern, while their so-called invincible partner bleeds out. Meanwhile, every word from Ankara acts like gasoline poured on the fire of the Muslim world, turning millions of hearts into erupting volcanoes of rage. This fury is no longer just emotion. It has materialized into steel wolves waiting to tear their prey apart on the northern border. In this game, the leadership is not playing only for Turkey. It is playing for the rebirth of an empire, redefining who truly owns the sacred lands, by completely rejecting the superpower's role as mediator. A move has been made never seen before. It proves that when regional powers unite, the voice from across the ocean becomes meaningless noise. The Ottoman blood oath is a vow of inheritance connecting the glory of the past with the unstoppable power of the future. They do not threaten with words. They threaten with launchers raised high and missiles ready to fly. Every inch of occupied land now trembles under the marching boots of a legion burning with the fire of vengeance. Flatten everything is not a slogan. It is the command of history itself, the purification of those who have long trampled on humanity. When thick black smoke blots out the sun over Tel Aviv, the world will remember this day, the day Turkey officially declared war on destiny to write the final bloody chapter for a nation that history has already condemned. The target may possess immense destructive power, but Turkey possesses the unbreakable will of a resurgent empire, a fire no defense system on earth can stop. The game has entered its most savage phase. The masters in Ankara are smiling from their throne of absolute supremacy, watching the collapse of a monument once thought eternal. The Middle East is burning in the furnace of divine punishment. And the one lighting the fire is none other than the man who now holds the keys to life and death in this ancient land. The blood oath has been sworn. No power on earth can break it. Yes, Washington these days is no longer the command center of the world. It has become a pathetic theater of panic and confusion, where the sharpest strategic minds are desperately wrestling with a brutal, nightmarish reality they never saw coming. The man in charge, the one who has always bragged about being the ultimate genius of negotiation and unpredictable moves, is now trapped in a deadly game where every rule of bargaining has been viciously ripped to shreds. Look at the ghostly pale faces inside the White House. You can see it clearly. The superpower is caught in a classic geopolitical death trap with no easy escape. On one side is the spoiled, arrogant, beloved child, now gasping and bleeding heavily under the crushing siege of the monstrous alliance. On the other side stands the hard, indispensable ally, Turkey, the giant that holds the very keys to the alliance's survival on the eastern flank. This is no longer about tweeting tough talk or making big promises. This is a make-or-break choice that could destroy everything. The administration is standing frozen between two raging whirlpools of fire. If they choose to fully protect the one, they will permanently lose Turkey, and with it hand the entire Mediterranean and Black Sea straits to rival powers on a silver platter. If they try to appease Ankara and calm the storm down, that will be the political death sentence for influence over Jerusalem and the end of the strongman image at home. The so-called master of the deal returned to power, promising national priority and an end to endless costly wars that drain blood and treasure. Yet here they are forced to watch a full-scale rebellion exploding right inside the heart of the strongest military alliance in human history, and they look completely powerless. Turkey, once seen as the frontline fortress against Eastern expansion, has now unsheathed its sword and pointed it directly at the #1 regional darling. The face of the administration is not just worried anymore. It is frozen in pure terror at the harsh truth staring it down. Deterrence has hit rock bottom. When Ankara boldly declared it would fight alongside Iran and Hezbollah, it didn't ask for Washington's permission. It simply gave orders telling Washington to stay the hell out. This is a direct, humiliating slap across the face of the doctrine of national priority. The man who once threatened sanctions and tariffs left and right now realizes his economic punishments, and military aid threats are nothing more than blank bullets against a Turkey that has achieved nearly 80% self-sufficiency in defense production and is ready to link arms with Tehran to create a whole new financial and military order. The brilliance lies in how perfectly the weakness has been targeted. Turkey is not just another country. It controls the strategic Bosphorus Strait, hosts critical early warning radar stations, and houses tactical nuclear weapons at Incirlik base. If the administration dares to move even one finger to defend the ally by pressuring Turkey, Ankara can instantly shut down those bases, blind the fleet in the Mediterranean, turning once mighty naval power into helpless sitting ducks. The leadership is now truly caught in an impossible soul-crushing dilemma, staring at the war map. They see the very advanced aircraft once refused for sale being replaced by unstoppable swarms of Turkish drones and strike aircraft dominating the skies over the region. The weapons Washington once used to contain Ankara have now become the very tools that allow Turkey to stand tall and openly defy the rulemaker itself. The sight of panic and sweating in the halls of power is living proof of the total failure of a foreign policy that relied only on brute muscle while forgetting one simple truth. A cornered tiger will always find a way to tear its captor apart. In the closed-door meetings at the Pentagon, the biggest question is no longer how to destroy the Turkey-Iran alliance. The desperate question has become, how the hell do we save the ally from being wiped off the map without having to declare war on a major alliance member? The target is the sacred political lifeline, the center of powerful financial interests, and the strongest lobbying machine in Washington. But Turkey is the military backbone of the entire position in the Middle East. The superpower is now playing an insanely dangerous double game, sending carrier groups to reassure Tel Aviv while whispering soft, begging words to Ankara to please hold back. But the Sultan, sitting firmly on the throne of absolute superiority, no longer cares for empty promises from across the sea. He knows the superpower is weaker and more divided than ever before. This is the once-in-a-thousand-years golden opportunity for Turkey to completely break free from the Western orbit, stand tall as the undisputed leader of the Muslim world, and reshape the entire region under its own rules. The image of frantic shuffling through dark intelligence reports about the collapsing northern front has become the perfect symbol of the sunset of an empire, The giant now looks like a blind, clumsy old man waving a rusty sword, desperately trying to scare away a pack of hungry wolves that are tightening their circle tighter and tighter. Every single move made is loaded with deadly risk.